seconds. And if you did 25, you'd get another play in. But the clock is now running from 39 down as the play ended. The offense would not have to run another play unless the defense had an injury that reset it to 25 seconds instead of the 39 or 38 or whatever second was on the 40-second clock, which was under the game clock time. And then they would get a chance to force the offense to run another play, okay? If you're confused right now, try not to be, because it would be a rare occurrence, but if it did occur, then there's going to be a 40-second start if there's an injury by the defense, okay? When you're within the 40 seconds of the second period or fourth period. Any questions on that? Okay. We've all been in games, especially sometimes in the hot, humid days, where Thor, the god of lightning, shows up. And we know the rules. We have to shut it down. And after you've gone for over half an hour without any clap of thunder or bolt of lightning, you can then get ready to play again. Issues became, what happened if this occurred just before halftime? Could you count the weather delay as halftime and move on? Yeah. You could only if both coaches agreed to end the second period prematurely. Now, if it was 2nd and 10 at midfield with 10 seconds to go, they might agree. But if it was 1st and goal with a minute to go, they might not agree, especially the team that had the 1st and goal. So now you're faced with a rule book that said you had to have a 10-minute halftime, irregardless. You could shorten the halftime, but you couldn't shorten it below 10 minutes. With mutual agreement of the coaches and the referee, if you're now under 3 minutes in the second period to play, you can have a 1-minute halftime if you have the weather delay. When you came back out, you would have the 1-minute halftime. If you're a band leader, you're probably not going to be able to get very many songs in, but then you would have the 3-minute warm-up period for the start of the second half. Again, this is going to be rare, but it could occur. Any questions on that at all, again? Hey, we're going good so far. Those are the rule changes. And as always, there are some points of emphasis. Points of emphasis.
Ralph, before you do that, I got to stop you for a second. I just have to have you go back. I kind of double-clicked and paused the recording at the beginning. So I just want to go back, and I'll kind of ask you question by question just to make sure that this is on the recording. The first thing you said was that in pregame, the referees are going to ask the coaches who is responsible for deciding about penalties, correct?
Yes, yes.
And that can be the coach.
Our expectation is it probably would always be the coach.
Awesome. And then the second thing was that now teams are going to be allowed to spike the ball from the shotgun in an effort to conserve time.
Yes.
Okay. And then can you talk just about the intentional grounding piece there? What would be considered intentional grounding?
Okay. If you're spiking it from the shotgun, it has to be immediate, number one. Number two is it has to be a clean catch. The quarterback juggles it, the quarterback drops it, the quarterback turns around and is juggling it as he's trying to catch it over his shoulder, and then he spikes it. Now we've got intentional grounding, okay?
Perfect. And then the third thing was that if the defense tries to simulate the cadence or do something, purposely to draw the offensive team off sides, that used to be a 15-yard personal foul, but now it's been reduced to a 5-yard personal foul.
It's not really a personal foul, it's just a 5-yard, yeah.
Just a 5-yard penalty.
There'll be a new signal for it. Whatever it is still on the drawing board.
Okay, and then I think I restarted it right when you were going into the 40-second clock. The very first thing that's kind of been added to that list of changing times was what?
Any new series created after a scrimmage kick, which would be a punt, a field goal attempt, or a free kick, which would be a kickoff.
Awesome.
The clock would start. The clock would start administratively for 25 seconds. It'd be the old, just like the old-fashioned way, pointing at the ball, hitting the red place.
Awesome. Let me see if I can mute that. There we go. All right. Go ahead and carry on then and tell us about the emphasis for this year.
Okay. Well, the first point of emphasis is sportsmanship. And of course, we expect you guys to be great leaders to your team and the team kids to be sportsmanlike. This more or less hits on things that happen beyond your realm. So it would be more the responsibility of the athletic director or the site director or the school principal or whoever might be there. Spectator behavior, pregame, anything during the pregame warm up or the handshake after the game, stress sportsmanlike in there. And rarely do we have a problem with the coach or with the players. I'm sure, Mike, that you're like me and a thick-skinned. If you hear some parent from the stand screaming at you because Baby Bear hasn't had the plays that Mama Bear and Papa Bear think he should be running, we as officials, of course, are always on the end of that. That's the fan's right to pay his $1.50 or whatever it is to get into the game. The problem being, in my opinion, the only time I would ever get concerned about it would be if I heard a string of profanity, or if I heard one side belittling players on the other side, whether it be racial comments, any derogatory comments. If that occurs, we're going to ask for your help to determine who is the site facilitator, whether it be the athletic director or whatever, and say, hey, we've got a problem with some fan. Is that fair enough, guys?
Sounds good.
Okay. Second point of emphasis was intentional grounding. Now, we all have TV, and let's hope that we see more football on TV this fall than we have in hockey, basketball, and baseball this spring. However, a lot of fans, but even some coaches and many players have a issue about one of our rules that certainly differs from the collegiate level or the professional level, and that is unintentional grounding. I don't know how many times I flagged a quarterback that's rolling out for just drilling the ball over somebody's head out of bounds or whatever the case might be. And he would turn and say, hey, I'm outside the tackle box. And my response has been, in high school football, the only tackle box you got to worry about is when you go fishing tomorrow with Grandpa. That is not our rule. We have no rule that has anything to do with being outside the tackle box. Intentional grounding is to prevent a sack or to conserve time illegally. Okay? So regardless of whether he's inside the tackle box or outside the tackle box, it is still a flag if he dumps it, even if the pass goes over the line of scrimmage. Any questions on that at all? Okay. Ineligible downfield was another point of emphasis. And in the passing game, a lot of moving parts can occur, as I'm sure you coaches are well aware of. And one of the moving parts is, did the pass go over the line of scrimmage? Because if it didn't go over the line of scrimmage, there's no concern about who might be downfield for interior alignment, for ineligible receivers. If it does go over the line of scrimmage, Yeah, we give the offensive linemen a little leeway. We allow them to stay as long as they stay in the expanded neutral zone, and that is 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. They're okay. A lot of times that could happen with a block where the offensive lineman is trying to hold the block. Other times it could be just a big old Bubba wandering downfield to see where all the excitement was. Well, it is a penalty if the pass goes over the line of scrimmage. Now, if the pass is deflected off an eligible receiver in the backfield, say it was intended to be a screen pass, and it continued on in the air over the line of scrimmage, and you've got linemen that, by their playbook, are downfield trying to set up a blocking formation, and now you've got an eligible downfield. If it's deflected off a defensive player, say the quarterback is under pressure and a defender leaping gets a piece of the football, and that pass goes over the line of scrimmage, then there is no ineligible downfield. Any questions on that are all gone? Yeah, gang, excuse me. Those are the points of emphasis. Now, where we had a major expansion into 8-man football this year, do you guys want me to take a few minutes and go through what the 8-man differences are?
Yeah, that'd be good. Ralph, go ahead.
Okay. The first differential is in the size of the field. It's still 100 yards long, but is being narrowed now to 40 yards wide. In 8-man football, the game is more wide open, as you would expect. And to try to condense that so you don't have 110 to 99 scores, they narrow the field. So the same 100 yards, the Federation book allows this. It suggests 80 yards long, but that would involve having to move one set of the goalposts. And goalposts are not like lawn chairs where you can just pick them up and move them. That would be a Herculean event. And I'm sure a lot of the schools that are going to 8-man do it with the idea that someday, sometime, they may be able to move back to 11. So we kept the field at 100 yards. In the 11-man game, you can't have any more than 4 players in the backfield, okay? If you have 5, then we know it's an illegal formation. In 8-man football, you can't have any more than 3 players in the backfield, which would mean you would have traditionally you would have a 5-man line and 3 players in the backfield. Now, if you started having to play shorthanded because of injuries or ejections, then you would always have to have at least 3 men on the line of scrimmage. But in a traditional formation, you've got 3 men in the backfield, you've got 5 men on the line of scrimmage. There is no numbering requirement, okay? Everybody is an eligible receiver. Excuse me. Let me correct that. Whoa.
Well, on the end of the line.
When you sit in your living room and watch Tom Brady reruns for the last 2.5 months, sometimes you get a little carried away. Everybody can have an eligible number. Okay. The only eligible receivers are the 2 on each end of the line and the 3 in the backfield. Okay. Beyond that, the game is pretty much the same. Okay. It is wide open. And for any of you coaches that are here with us tonight that had 8-man football last year, you can certainly verify that. It moves quick, but it is still football. That's the key, I think, gang. It certainly can be a boon for many programs. Anything else that you'd like me to cover as far as the rules portion?
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and and get them out there.
This is sort of like the old-time reverend in a wedding. Speak now or forever hold your peace, right?
Coach Sterling's going to speak up.
Yep.
Awesome.
I have a, you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
The intentional grounding, like you brought up, kids bring up, I was outside the tackle box.
Mhm.
High school is a lot more stringent than the collegiate or the professional level.
Yeah.
And that can lead to injuries. With the kid having to eat the football or run with it, knowing that he can't throw it away like he can at the collegiate level. Has there been any discussion to try to reevaluate that ruling and make it more in line with the NCAA like we've done with many other rules?
That's a good question. Every year that has came up. Every year it has made its way out of the subcommittees. And a brief explanation of how rule changes work is we have 4 subcommittees. All the rules proposals, which have to go through the state, are broken up amongst the 4 committees. Majority, if the majority of a subcommittee says, hey, this looks like a good change, and puts it out onto the floor for the final vote, we then need 2/3 to pass. And a couple of instances, it's been around 50%, but never over 50, and never close to the 2/3. The argument against going to the NCAA rule is, well, first of all, quarterbacks are privileged people in the NFL level. Okay, I guess there's no when you get paid $50 million to sign a contract and then worry about it later, that's a pretty good deal. Also, at both the NFL and the NCAA level, part of it is offense. You'll see there are a lot of rules that we don't have that collegiate football has and the NFL has, such as an awarded first down on any defensive personal foul. And the feeling is that is to up the attendance.
Ralph,
more tickets.
The one thing I would say is, if you're talking about the quarterback being much more expensive at the NFL,
Mhm.
I mean, at the high school level, you're lucky if you have one quarterback.
Oh, I know.
You don't have like we heard last night. You don't have a 1B sitting around that's just as good.
Yeah.
And to protect those kids, I mean, that's the big thing. I had a quarterback that because he couldn't throw the ball away, he ate it, got tackled from behind, and broke his leg in 4 places.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was a very good athlete, and that's something that really has to be put in perspective when you're talking about high school athletes. These guys have to be protected a little bit more. We've done everything to make us more in line with the NCAA, with widening the playing parameters, as well as using an NCAA ball, and trying to get more in line with them. But then when you get a kid like that, who you got to protect him. And you could talk to any of the coaches at our level. Usually, that's your best athlete playing quarterback. You lose that guy. And that's something that we have to really address within the high school level, is that quarterback has to be protected as well.
Yeah. No, I certainly hear you, especially in the smaller schools that may not have like you say, a backup quarterback. I certainly hear you. It's been, all I can say is it's never really had a majority vote for a final passage.
If we wanted to make a push on that, Ralph, what would be the best avenue to do that? Who would be the best person to contact?
Just keep bitching at me.
All right.
Okay.
I'd like to see that too, from my perspective. I agree with Dave that there's not many of us out who are running, a couple quarterbacks out here who, are prepped up and ready to go. So anything that would protect those guys, I'd be all for.
Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah,
I know in basketball we have. I hate to say I'm a basketball referee. We have the so-called main exceptions to some of the things. Is there any possibility of having a main exception to the intentional grounding rule? You just come and put it across statewide that get outside, go with the NCAA perimeter. Kids outside the tackle box, whatever. He throws the ball away. It's just an incomplete pass.
The only exception you could have would be to run it as an experimental rule. The National Federation has to approve an experimental rule, and it has been run several times by other states.
Okay.
With kind of a lukewarm, should we change it, should we not? There never was an outspoken experimental result from that said, oh, gee, yeah, we should really do it. I know, I hear where you're coming from, and just to equate what the previous speaker mentioned about having backup quarterbacks or whatever. I remember back in the Gabby Price Bangor High School era, he had a quarterback that was injured, and one of the reporters asked him in postgame, "What's going to happen now?" And he quite easily said, "My second string quarterback became my first string quarterback. My third string quarterback became my second string quarterback, and my fourth string quarterback is now my third string quarterback." That's a big school. That's a school with probably 80 kids suiting up at the time. On the flip side, Stearns High School in Millinocket played for the state championship several years ago. They only had about 20 kids on their team. Their quarterback got hurt early in the game, and the backup quarterback, if you wanted to call him that, was the offensive tackle, who really was not a quarterback. So I agree. I hear where you're coming from. A thing that you guys can do is every year there's a questionnaire that the National Federation sends out to the MPA, to every state organization. Yeah, and it always asks, "Are you happy with last year's rule changes? Excuse me. Is this a problem in your area?" And there are funky questions like, "Does the band play too loud?" or whatever. And then the third section always says, "Would you support this rule change?" And the tackle box one is quite often on there. At the national meeting, when we get together to discuss the rules, we have a report as to where all of the support is for new rule changes. That has been on a couple of times, and coaches were usually maybe 60% in favor of it. The officials are about 50-50. But that by itself never really had enough to really carry it deep into discussions on the voting day. Now, if you guys can keep after your athletic directors, because I think the MPA ships them in through the athletic directors. And if they do, there's your chance to at least have your opinion heard. And we, as rule committee members, look at the results, especially if they're on the docket. Okay, hey, this one was overwhelmingly in favor of a change. Let's talk a little deeper about that. So that's one thing you guys can do. It might help.
Awesome. Thanks, Ralph. Anybody else got questions out there?
If not,
I have a comment.
Alan Snell wants to speak.
Go ahead, Alan.
My comment is that this is, we're now moving more forward into a technological world, which Mike, you're very adept at. And it would occur to me that this might be a way to conduct these rules clinics in the future. And certainly we'd be willing to do it. It used to be fun when we were younger to go around that week in August and starting Sunday and go all the way, drive all the way from Bangor to now Biddeford. Now that we're getting old, Ralph and I, it's not quite as much fun on the trip back, but we certainly would be willing. And Mike Burnham is open to doing this sort of thing. So in the future, if there was a way that we could set up 4 or 5 of these in this process, and you explained at the beginning, there's a way to keep attendance, which the MPA wants, and I could see at the bottom of the screen, you had 27 participants there at one time. So we would certainly be open to that. And
yeah, I think it's a good idea. I would imagine that it'll get pretty good feedback, and we'll kind of request, through our coaches association to continue like this, especially if it works for you guys too.
Yeah, that would be good. And then the second little piece, and again, through technology, Ralph attends the NFHS meeting every January when these new rules are determined. And prior to that, a questionnaire is sent out about the proposed rules, and Ralph has the opportunity to have feedback. That is sent to Mike Burnham, who in turn sends it to me and to Ralph and a couple other people. We send it out to a few people that we know, but we don't really get much feedback. But we could, if you have a process through which you reach all of your coaches. I mean, when I received that from Mike Burnham, I could simply forward it to you or to whoever has the email list for all your coaches, and it could be forwarded to them. And if they chose to, they could read the rules that are being proposed for that year and get feedback back to either Ralph or I. When
Yeah,
he
that would
goes
be-
to the meet, and when he goes to the meeting, he's, I mean, he has the same vote as New York, California. They all get one vote. And Ralph, actually, for the past 4 years, he's been a member of the manual committee, and we'll have a new manual this year. And he's been there so long that he actually has quite a bit of seniority power at the place. So anyway, we'd be certainly willing to do that. That would be simple.
Yeah,
if we
if
were,
you can get that information to me, Alan, I certainly can get it out to all the coaches. I have everybody's email address, so that'd be perfect.
well, all I've got to do is, as you know, hit a button when I get it to Mike Hathaway, and we'll do that.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Hey,
Coach
just-
Goff, you got a question down there?
Yeah, I got a couple for for these gentlemen. Gentlemen, can you clarify to me what you're looking for in terms of pass interference / illegal contact by the defensive back / linebackers? I had a couple of crews give me two completely different interpretations last year. One crew told me you cannot lay hands on a receiver, even off the line of scrimmage, even within the first 5 yards. And then I had another crew tell me hands could be on the receivers 20, 30, 40 yards downfield, and he even could go through the receiver to get to the ball as long as he was playing the ball. Both instances worked to our advantage and disadvantage throughout the course of the year. I actually pointed out to the one crew I was working, as I saw the team that we were getting ready to play, that they like to get their hands on receivers. So I kind of tipped the refs off. That helped us that game. But then on the flip side of that, there was a lot of contact 20, 30, 40 yards downfield, a lot of pushing and shoving, nothing being called. Again, can you clarify the rule and what you guys are actually looking for in that circumstance?
Those are very good questions. Dealing with the first one, when can the D-back make contact with an eligible receiver? As long as that eligible receiver is a potential blocker, okay? Is the D-back is trying to read the play, if he's a eligible receiver coming at it, he's got every right in the world to try to shove that eligible receiver off and head to wherever the ball might be. He loses that legality the minute either the eligible receiver is step for step with him. If he's at the defender's side, hey, he's not a blocker anymore. He's going down trying to catch a touchdown pass, okay? Or he turns away. In other words, he runs a down and in pattern or a down and out pattern. Once he's turned away from the defender, he's no longer a potential blocker. Contact then would be pass interference if the ball was in the air in his direction, or illegal use of the hands if the ball was not at that point. Question on the deep pass and this contact downfield. You got to remember that both the offensive player and the defensive player have an opportunity to get to that ball. If both sets of eyes are on the ball, the defender can't play through the back of the receiver. But if they're side by side and they're both going up and they're bumping each other, to me, there's no foul. Both kids were looking at the ball. It's when one kid is not looking at the ball and making contact with the receiver that you get the flag. Does that help?
That helps tremendously. Thank you very much.
Sure.
My next question to you is, what are you men looking for in terms of false starts? Last year, there was a couple of games where there was any little sudden movement by the offensive lineman, even if his feet were still planted in the ground, a flag was coming out where they, false start. And then, another game or two we played, you've got the offensive lineman literally turning into the back towards the quarterback who's in the shotgun to kind of hear the audible, if you will. Another time he's touching the center's left leg to indicate to the center to snap the ball back to the quarterback, and no, nothing was called. So I'm just trying to get that clarified in terms of what you guys are looking for, subtle movements, non-subtle movements, and what you're looking for in order to call a false start on the offensive lineman.
Well, any quick jerk to me would be a false start. And we've all seen a lineman go down and jerk his head up and get called for it. If the lineman is, number one, we have to give everybody a chance to breathe. So if the lineman is in a 3-point stance and out of his body he is inhaling or exhaling, or he's turning his head slightly to see if he's in the right spot or whatever, that to me is a nothing, okay? I don't think any coach would want us to become pleased to a point that we're flagging every very subtle move by an offensive player, or call holding if the play is on the other side of the field or whatever. I mean, we try to be traffic cops and call things that are given an advantage to one team, okay? If the left guard turns his head and looks to see if the wing is in motion, then that shouldn't be anything. But if the shoulders and everything are twitching, then that becomes something else. Does that help at all?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more for me, guys. And, last year was the first year that I was a head coach at Belfast. I really didn't see a lot of what I'm about to ask. And I think that's a credit to the coaches in Maine in general for really making it a point of emphasis. And that's going to the head or neck area in any way, shape, or form, whether it's a helmet-to-helmet hit, whether it's tackling up high, whether it's stiff arming to the neck or head area. Again, I didn't see a whole heck of a lot of it, but if something like that were to take place in the game, what exactly are you guys deeming is unsportsmanlike, and what are the consequences of that?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't be unsportsmanlike. It would be a personal foul.
Okay.
Illegal helmet contact is a 15-yard penalty. If it was vicious with the intent to injure, we could toss the kid right on the spot. Okay, we have that authority. If it's a targeted foul where he comes running in, puts his head down, levels the kid, he's probably going to get tossed. Definitely going to be a 15-yard.
Does he sit the next game as well? I know that's how they do it in college.
That's the MPA rule. If you're ejected from a sport, you have to set out the next week. Yeah. And my understanding, although Alan would have a better handle on this than I would.
And at the same level, Ralph.
At the same level. If it was a varsity game.
You're ejected from a varsity game, you have to stay out until you miss the next varsity game.
Mm-hmm. Does that help, guys?
Good stuff, guys. Thank you very much.
That's awesome. I have one question too, Ralph, on aiding the runner. I got a lot of different answers from officials this year on the interpretation of that rule. In one instance this year, we had a situation where the offensive lineman was grabbing the runner from in front of him and pulling him forward, and it wasn't called. There was another situation in which the running back was in a pile and the runner was kind of pushed from behind, and it was called because they said the hands were in contact with the runner. And then in that same exact situation, I've seen it not called because they say that the runner is within a pile, and that it doesn't matter if the hands are in direct contact with the runner. So could you clarify that one for me as best you can?
I can the best I can. And yes, I think we could turn on the TV any Saturday or Sunday and see that happening over and over and over. A compromise call that I like to make is if I see that happening, if I see a rugby scrum forming or somebody trying to grab a hold of the runner to pull him, a teammate, to me, the runner now has had his forward progress stopped. It's no longer his forward progress. It's the ball's dead there, period. That, to me, is easier than arguing about, well, should that be helping the runner? No, his forward progress is stopped right here. When Big Ol' Bubba tried to drag him across the goal line, his forward progress was stopped here when Big Ol' Bubba pushed him from behind across the goal line, okay? That's my stance on it. We should be calling it more. I mean, when we see that happen, you got two choices. You got three choices. One is pretend you didn't see it, which I don't think is the right choice. Two is to rule it forward progress is stopped, and three is to throw a flag. Does that help?
Yeah, that's good. I like the stopping of the forward progress. I'm going to use that, if you don't mind, in my conversations next year.
Please do. Yeah.
All right. Any other guys have any questions they want to get on here before we let these guys go?
Yeah, I just want to clarify on the intentional the spiking out of the gun, which I like. If the snap theoretically bounces like one time and he can't spike it at that point?
You cannot spike it. If it
Or if you-
bounces, part of the rationale there is now you're giving the quarterback a chance to, if it's rolling to it, pick it up and quickly spike it, to prevent a sack. The important thing to remember is it has to be a clean catch, a clean snap. If it bounces on the ground, no, that's not a clean snap.
Okay.
That's
So
a
even if
rule
it's,
correction. You can spike it, but it's an intentional grounding penalty.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, you can spike it. Yeah, it's just a
You
penalty.
can spike it, but
5 yards from the spot of the spike and a loss of down. So
the yellow hanky's going to go in the air.
oh, yeah.
So, but theoretically, there's, your favorite Tom Brady, you mentioned him. I see him do it all the time. Like if there's a running back in the area, which there theoretically is, couldn't you argue he was throwing it at his feet?
Well, you could argue that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm ready to. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Whether or not you'd win the argument might be another story.
All right,
Normally, incidentally, guys, there are a lot of times when we may throw an intentional grounding flag and then eat it if an official from that area came running in and said, gee, the tight end was right there. Okay, we wave off the flag. Same would be true if we had a flag for an ineligible downfield, but the pass didn't go over the line of scrimmage. Those are easy ones to eat. And I think it works better that way than it does to confer, hey, do you think there was an eligible, get our crews together and discuss it before we throw the flag.
I got
I
you. I appreciate
personally,
it.
I'd rather throw the flag and eat it once I was told there was an eligible in the area.
Awesome. Anything else, fellas?
I'll just leave you with one quick story, if I may, about sportsmanship.
Go ahead, Coach. Ralph.
This was a game that Alan Snell, and as you can see, he's bespectacled. And Tommy Roberts, if you remember Tommy, he also wore glasses. It's also a PG-13 quote from fan, or maybe a quote. We were leaving the field after a hotly contested regional playoff game, when all of a sudden one of the players' grandmothers come running over in front of us. Her head was spinning around like the little girl in Exorcist, and she was screaming, "Get some glasses! Get some fucking glasses!" And then we all looked at each other, and we said, "Gee." Alan and Tom Roberts both had glasses, so she must have been talking to the other three of us. So we quickly went to the eye doctors.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for your time today. Appreciate this. I'm in total agreement that this would be a great way to do this moving forward.
I agree. We'll work on it. You can help us do that, and we're happy to do it.
Awesome.
Actually, where we're sitting right now, this was provided for us by